Hi everyone, here's the Book Chemist once again. Happy 2024 everybody. I hope you had an awesome holiday break. As always, at the end of the year, I like to look back on the past 12 months and talk about my favorite books from the year. So today I'm going to talk about my 20 favorite fiction books from 2023. For the purpose of this list, I'm only going to consider fiction books that I've read for the first time in 2023, although a couple of the books in this list kind of stretch the definition of fiction. More on that in a minute. Don't get too bogged down in the ranking of the books between 1st and 20th. It's just a way for me to make it fun. However, as I've been doing for the past couple of years, I'm going to post a full ranking of all 55 new fiction books I've read in 2023 on my Patreon page. As a bit of a paltry, to be honest, a bit of a lousy thank you to my patrons for supporting the YouTube channel, because that's really awesome and I really appreciate it. Before I start, 2 suggestions from outside the list. The first one would be A Waiter in Paris, which is an awesome memoir about life in Paris, about the food industry and what it means to work in a busy restaurant in a tourist city, and about life as an expat, about adapting to life in a different country, getting to grips with a different way of life. All of these 3 things are things that interest me a lot, and Waiter in Paris might well be the book that I read in 2023 that I found most gripping, most enjoyable on a page-by-page basis. My favorite history book from last year was Revolutionary Spring by Christopher Clark, a great, comprehensive, fantastic account of the 1848 revolutions, a historical topic that I hold very dear and that it's as enthralling as it is baffling. This is a rigorous historiographic study that approaches this moment in history from a very contemporary perspective, but it's also a very warm book and it's full of anecdotes and it's really enjoyable. I've read maybe not tons of books on the subject, but quite a few, and I would say that Revolutionary Spring is possibly the most rewarding as far as its historiographical insight is concerned, and definitely the most pleasant. Let's start with the actual list. Number 20 is The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin, her novel of utopian societies and colliding worldviews and political systems. It's one of the most insightful science fiction novels I've read in recent years, and I enjoyed it almost as much as The Left Hand of Darkness, which was one of my favorite books from 2022. Brooklyn crime novel, Jonathan Letham's latest novel, would be number 19. As I mentioned in my review of the book, and by the way, if I've filmed a review of the books I'm gonna talk about in this video, I'll put a link to it in the description box. As I've mentioned there, this is a very odd beast. It's very much of a companion piece to Jonathan Letham's Fortress of Solitude, and I'm not sure how well it stands on its own legs. That said, it's still a novel from one of my very favorite writers, and it just does it for me. It was still amazing. The Flamethrowers by Rachel Kushner was a beautiful novel about political intrigue and political violence, and about a few really horrid men. A few months after reading the book, I find that what has stayed with me the most was the portrayal of the protagonist's evolution as a young artist, and the book's portrayal of the ways in which the experiences she encounters in the novel, both the positive and the negative, come to shape the person and the artist that she becomes. Howard Jacobson's The Mighty Walzer is a novel about ping pong, set in the Jewish community in Manchester. It's very much a British take on the Philip Roth's Poor Noise Complaint. It's a very funny novel, although I would say that its quasi-macho type of humor gets a little tiring toward the end of the book. The book is, however, fully redeemed, at least in my eyes, by the tenderness of its final pages, where the protagonist meets again and confronts again the people who meant so much to him during his formative teenage years. Old girlfriends, old friends. Malamud's A New Life is a mystery to me. This was definitely recommended to me by somebody, and I was convinced that it was a friend of mine who recommended it. And when I thanked him for recommending the novel because I really liked it, he said that he'd never heard of it and he had no idea what I was talking about. So who recommended A New Life to me? It was probably one of you people. So if that person's watching, please do let me know. The novel was awesome, by the way. Whoever did it, thank you. It's a great campus novel that taught me how the inner conflicts of academia, for instance, between pragmatism and idealism, between profit and principle, are really nothing new, and they've been going on at least since the 1960s. As somebody who worked, however briefly, in academia, a lot of the debates and fights that the academic staff in the novel is engaged in, they felt very familiar. It's a novel that's peopled by humane, by complex characters. It reminded me somewhat of Philip Roth. The Sunken Land Begins to Rise Again is an eerie story about an aquatic invasion in Brexit England and about two characters going through a midlife crisis. It's a very sinister book, whether the horrors it's describing are the horrors of life in a London bedsit or the horrors of fish people, and it's definitely one of the strangest books I've read in 2023. Number 14 is Crook Manifesto, Colson Whitehead's second installment in his Harlem trilogy. An incredibly fun, incredibly gripping, really funny, really humorous novel, which has lots to say about the demands of city life and about how thin the veneer of civilization is on the facade of our institutions. It's written like magic. Number 13 is Leonardo Sciascia's La scomparsa di Majorana, Majorana's disappearance. Now, is this even a novel? I am not entirely sure. Is this even fiction, at least? The word fiction doesn't really exist in Italian. This book is described at times as a novel, at times as an essay, and I'm sure somebody out there will be able to tell me exactly where it falls, but whether the events described in it happened exactly as they did in the unwritten world, call it real life, is almost besides the point. This is an amazing work of art that takes as its springboard an investigation into the disappearance of Ettore Majorana, an Italian physicist, and uses this topic as a way to discuss ethics in science, specifically when it comes to those people, those scientists who built the atomic bomb in the 1940s. This is a book that has the simple clear-headedness to remind us that nobody had to build these bombs and these monstrous devices, that it was something that people decided to do, no matter what our collective myth-making or collective narratives later established, or no matter the stories we tell ourselves. Number 12 is L'Imperio, Federico de Roberto's unfinished third installment in his naturalist saga. And this is Italian naturalism at its best. It's a novel about the intrigues and the hypocrisy of the Italian parliamentary system in the newly unified country at the end of the 19th century, and about how flimsy institutions, public institutions, can be in a supposedly democratic country. The apex of this novel is a scene that is as violent, as grim and vile, and as revelatory as anything you are going to encounter in its genre. Paul Lafarge's The Night Ocean was very much of a hidden gem for me. A bit like Waiter in Paris, it's a book that ticks several of the boxes that I really care for, several of the things I like to read about. It's a book that deals with a writer's investigation into the life of H.P. Lovecraft, one of my favorite writers, an investigation that reveals a strange web of fabrication, lies, and intrigue. It's very much a love story to Lovecraft's fiction, especially Lovecraft's recurring theme of inhabiting other people's lives and other people's bodies. Really, it's a love letter to all pulp fiction from the mid-20th century. It's also a book that plays beautifully with its genre and that has lots to say about that thin line that separates fact from fiction, creativity from lies, invention from artistry. The mystery in this novel is going to be stimulating for any reader, but this is definitely one that's going to be a great treat for H.P. Lovecraft fans, especially those fans who are hardcore enough to have first read S.T. Josh's monumental biography of Lovecraft, I Am Providence. If you are familiar with the facts of Lovecraft's life, you're really going to get a lot of fun out of this novel. Speaking of Lovecraft, the 20 Days of Turin, Le 20 Giornate di Torino, is a Lovecraftian treatment of the Italian years of lead, the Anni di Piombo in the 1970s. This is a book that is as eerie and as spooky as The Sunken Land, as I mentioned, although this is a more straightforward horror story, one that definitely got under my skin and is likely to stay there for a very long time. Number 9 is Octavia Butler's Kindred, her amazing novel of time travel, probably the best time travel novel of all times, definitely the best that I've read at least. It's a novel that uses its fantastical elements to speak about something that's as simple as it is inescapable, the fact that the crimes of our ancestors, whether our ancestors were their perpetrators or whether they were the victims of these crimes are very much present, they're very much with us, no matter how much we wish we could forget them, no matter how much we wish they weren't. Julius Taranto's How I Won the Nobel Prize was, by some margin, my favorite debut novel from 2023. A novel full of moral and scientific dilemmas set in a university for the disgraced. It was equally uncomfortable and rewarding. Mrs. Caliban, number 7, was a perfect short novel of love and frog people, a beautiful tale about a woman's desire to continue living in spite of her problems, both vast, tragic problems and petty, simple concerns that trouble their everyday life. Number 6 is The Sympathizer, Viet Thanh novel about the aftermath of the Vietnam War on the Vietnamese people, both those people who stayed in the country and those who fled because they supported the losing regime in the course of the war. This is a book that is as funny as it is dark. It's a book that deals with some of the darkest aspects of the human condition, but that nonetheless manages to show great tenderness, fraternal love, and even hope. I was late reading this novel, but I was absolutely blown away by it. Number 5 is The Overstory by Richard Powers, a hugely ambitious and complex novel about a set of unique, complicated characters who, all of them, in their respective ways, experience the ways in which trees are connected and bound to all life on Earth, including human life. It's a book that reels with astonishment at the miracles of life and nature, and it's very much a testament both to human wisdom and to human folly. I was really surprised when I posted my review to read how many of you in the comments apparently disliked the novel. I was really astonished. Some of you even seemed to suggest that it's a bit of a work that exploits a certain type of environmentalist sentimentality. I don't know, guys. I couldn't disagree more. Number 4 is The Most Secret Memory of Man, Mohamed Mbougar Sarr's intriguing novel of writerly obsession and expat life. A book that talks in a very courageous, very brave manner about what it means to build a life as a person of letters. Its mystery is very compelling, and the book has lots to say about all sorts of topics that relate in particular to being somebody from a minority who makes their life in a Western country. What stayed with me and what spoke to me very strongly were its reflections on what it means to build your life in a different country than your homeland, with all the paradoxes, all the difficulties, all of the sacrifices that that situation entails. Number 3 is Karen Joy Fowler's Booth. I was shocked when I compiled this list to see how high I was placing Booth. And that's because this is almost a quietly amazing novel. It's written so beautifully, and it's so engaging and so fun that I almost forgot how seriously it deals with its political and its historical themes. This is a book that's determined to explore the reasons why many of us decide to embrace ideologies and to go out of their way to support ideologies and worldviews and factions, which at the end of the day are plainly monstrous. It's a book that's peopled with a lot of very unpleasant characters, some of them straight up evil, but that deals with these characters in a way that's very humane, makes them into fully rounded people without for that reason turning them into anti-heroes or without in any way excusing their crimes. Number 2 is Germinal, Émile Zola's masterpiece nightmare of industrial France, a book that makes Giovanni Verga read like Manzoni and Thomas Hardy read like Walter Scott. The degree of its clinical insight into the psyche and the behavior of each character in its immense cast is stunning. This is a novel that's highly aware of the reasons why people from different walks of life, family men and young activists, for instance, or rich owners and the workers they employ, why these people cannot speak to each other, why their worldviews are so very different. And it shows this through the vagaries of its diabolical plot. I'm sure this is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. For starters, it's a very gruesome and very bleak novel, at times theatrically so, but it's exactly up my alley, and I found myself gripped and astonished all the way through. I would say it's probably the most ambitious naturalist novel I've ever read, alongside De Roberto's Viceroy's Ibicere. Number 1, my favorite book from 2023 was The Years by Annie Ernaux. And yes, I know that The Years is not technically fiction, and I was planning to rank this as number 0 to indicate both that it was at the top of the list, but that it was also outside the list. But to be honest, I struggle to think of a book that captures better the alchemical balance between personal and collective that is, in my opinion, at the heart of fiction. This is a collective history of France in the second half of the 20th century that is also very much the personal history of a specific woman. It's a book that manages to capture the essence of a fading period of history without relying on the goggles of nostalgia. It's a eulogy for a passing time that is also very much the blueprint for eulogies in general, be they dedicated to a specific period in history or more simply to human life. There is immense lyrical beauty in here, even though most of it stems from the material of the quotidian and the everyday, from the most common, the most recognizable, at times the most base experiences. Its first introductory chapter alone is one of the most moving pieces of prose I've read in a very long time. So here you have them, 20 great books, 22 actually. I definitely recommend all of them. I very much look forward to hearing what your favorite books from 2023 were. Please let me know in the comments. And thank you so much, as always, for watching my videos in the course of last year. That's always awesome, always appreciated. Let me know if these videos sounded better than the others. I've invested in a microphone lots of you people suggested that I did, so why not? And I don't think the microphone is anything great, but we'll see if it works. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. Happy 2024. Bye everybody.